Hi everybody, this is going to be the final video in my series on the Royal Albert Hall version of Moby Dick, and I'd like to get started just where I left off on the last video, which was throwing the snare wires off, and Bonzo proceeds to play some doubles across the drums with the bass drum in between, and I'll demonstrate what he does at that point. So he's picking up from where we left off. We were right about here at this point in the solo. Okay, so before I go any further, I just want to talk about what he's doing in this section a little bit, go into some detail. He gets it started by playing doubles between his hands and foot like this. There might be a couple, I think there's a few left-hand strokes in just doubles alone as well. He kind of flips it around. So he goes from this feeling he turns it into right hand kind of on the downbeat, and the snare drum is playing doubles, and the hi-hat goes on the downbeat, bass drum starts to come in on the upbeat like this. Then from there he starts to subdivide that into these phrases with the right hand, like this. Now at that point, I really think his left hand is kind of breaking up a little bit more, because when he comes out of it, you hear his left hand playing this kind of thing. To fit that rhythm. Okay, so let's take a look at what's happening once he gets the snares turned back on. We've got this kind of thing happening. Okay, now within that there's a lot of, again, very spontaneous kind of expression going on there. But it's basically this. And as you go faster between this, left, right, and then foot, either two strokes or one, it depends. At some point I believe he does this. It's like he gets those kind of quick quadruplets in the snare drum. And then he moves on to the snare after he plays. And I believe he does, I can't tell if he's muting the drum with his left hand, but he plays this kind of thing. And then he goes into the final section of the solo before he plays the triplets. Okay, so what's going on in there is basically the hi-hat is on the downbeats and the snare is playing doubles along with the bass drum, but they're not always exactly in sync. It's almost like the bass drum and the left hand are a little bit independent of each other. So you got this kind of thing happening. In other words, the left hand is more like playing a triplet, and the bass drum is playing almost more of like a, almost, I think, kind of, it flows in between the sixteenths and the triplets like this. It's a bit of a tricky one to actually break down. Again, it's one of these things that I think is very unique and organic to Bonzo's playing. Now, when he finishes up that section, that's when we move into the big finale with the triplets. So out of this. So, coming out of the triplets, he slows them down, obviously. Triplets are all left hand, right hand, foot. Now, he does move his left hand around quite a bit. The way those work, we've looked at this before in other videos, but let's take another look at it again. It's worth checking this out once more. So, triplets start with left, right foot, and then he's playing mostly the right hand on the snare when he moves on to it. Then he plays some quick, almost like flams, triplets left, right on the snare. combinations you can do. I would encourage you to actually explore a lot of them. Practice different combinations. Practice left on the snare, right on the tom, and then to the floor like this. And then this. Any mix you want, but specifically what Bonzo is doing there is he's doing a lot of breakups between the snare and the two toms, occasionally hitting this low tom, and then he gets into the crossovers, which like I said, I think we should just take a look at one more time. So again, that's So let's take a look at what he plays at the very end after the melody on his sort of last solo cadenza. He plays, starts it off on the snare, and he goes into this thing that he would do often where he throws his stick kind of into a quick twirl in between moving with his left hand across the drums. You may have seen photographs of him with his hand up in the air and his left hand somewhere over here across the toms and floor tom. So he does this rather quickly, and I'm not the greatest stick twirler, but I'm going to try to demonstrate this. He basically starts it out like this. I'll do it slower. Okay, and then he goes into a couple of those, and then he proceeds to play this very tumbly kind of group of fills between the tom, snare, and bass drum, and I believe it's this, but it is a little hard to distinguish also. But I think he's leading with the left hand for sure, and he's playing something kind of like this. So that's kind of like, and then he plays another one of these, this, and then he moves into this other fill, which goes. And that takes us to the very end of Moby Dick from Royal Albert Hall, January 9th, 1970, an iconic performance, and this whole experience has been really enlightening for me to take an in-depth look at this incredible drum solo. And as many times as I've heard it, looking closely at what he played just really reaffirms in my mind what a absolutely outstanding musician he was. Not just a great drummer, but a total musician. Thanks very much once again.